kind of a microcosm of what I went through. I went through the army and I transitioned out of it. It's like, okay, well, serving my country wasn't exactly what I was supposed to do for the rest of my life. And then I went to the corporate world and made a lot of money, still unhappy. Then entrepreneurship made a lot more money and I'm more unhappy. So like I kind of got frustrated to the point where I said, okay, well, what else is there? If
Yes.
I'm following the guidance that everybody tells me I should be doing and I'm still not happy, then what other alternatives are there out there? And for me, that was community, ancestral medicine, living closer to the land, respecting nature, that sort of thing. That's what the indigenous are telling us. That's what I've learned in my experience. And I think that that's in the States what people are starting to turn to because they realize that we've been lied to.
Hey, welcome back, Scottie. Man, it's been a while. Scottie, you ran the last time we talked, you were doing the Music School in Colombia. What are you up to now, man?
Well, we've expanded the vision, man. We still got the Coyotepe has been rebranded under Okoyai. What happened between so when we had talked, I was building a medicine music school. We eventually grew to over 8,000 members. I was like, huh, okay, there might be something to giving people like, free content. Now, what I figured out was that the piece that we were missing was community, meaning like people are really, really craving other people, like-minded interests. A lot of the
Yeah.
information about some of the things I was touching about, like medicine music, of course, is sort of in like the psychedelic healing, ancestral healing space. So I took some time, built a list, and we've now launched a new community on School that's also free, and it covers medicine music. We've got a podcast going. We've got a full ancestral healing and ayahuasca course going, and we're growing pretty rapidly. So that's like
Wow.
the next latest evolution.
Man, you've been busy.
I have it, man.
You've been busy. It's so man, the last time like the last time we spoke and you were doing the Coyote Music School and I I thought that was such a great idea because it mixes the all of my favorite things. And I was like, what could make that better? And like you said, community, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of us these days are looking for community and um a village, if you will. And I talk about that on the podcast all the time, the lack of a village and being a parent, man, having a village is very, very important. And you find through, your healing techniques and the medicine that people, in Colombia are also looking for community and a village. Is that right?
Yeah, the majority of the people that we're working with actually are American. So the Coyotepe
Really?
was mostly, yeah, like we've made a lot of changes, man. The Coyotepe community was mostly Latin America. And that's because medicine music and the style of medicine music that I was and still am teaching is mostly centered around like Colombia, Ecuador, that frame. But I think the people that are searching for and needing community the most are people in the Western world, in the developed world. And another major change was when I first started the music school, I thought it was like, oh, this is going to be a great big place to, maybe get people into ceremony or retreats or something. I've moved completely away from that model as well. So in my work with the medicine and in my work with indigenous leaders and elders, I realized that it's really about how you live your life. And
Yeah.
long-term healing can get to you in any number of different ways, right? You could take ayahuasca, you could go to an AA group, you could go to church, whatever. You could play music. And so I didn't want to exclude people that maybe have preconceived notions about ayahuasca or ancestral medicines, or maybe they're like super Christian and don't want to do anything psychedelic. No problem. It's like the underlying medicine, if you will, is community and reconnecting us back to our ancestral roots, which when you're talking
Yes.
about like a village, that's exactly it, man. And I think that everything we've done in the modern world, we like live in boxes, we go to our work in boxes, we spend some time with our children. If you look at the indigenous model, the village model, They're living with their children all the time. They're educating their children. They're doing everything as a family. They have their friends like literally next door, as opposed to having to get into a car and schedule a coffee date or something.
Yes.
And it's a completely different model. And so one of the most powerful things that we're doing here, I sat down and I said, okay, interesting. If we compare Western lives with Indigenous lives, Indigenous are pretty, in general, a whole lot happier. So why don't we just talk to them? And so what I started doing was I just used the relationships that I developed over time here and started saying, hey, would you sit down and talk to us every week? And so now we have several Indigenous tribes that sit down and talk to our community members every single week. We record those conversations, we translate them, because most of our elders like speak limited Spanish or sometimes good Spanish, but they don't speak English. So we
Right.
translate them, and over time, we're building this library of how to live in village again, how to connect to our ancestors again, and how to live in a more simple way. Because I think a lot of
Yeah.
times when it comes to like healing, people are like looking for the super duper latest techniques. It's like it's really
Yeah.
not that hard, guys. Eat well, sleep well, treat your people well, raise your children well, clean your room, repeat.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, for me, I find it fascinating when we're talking about the Western world. South America is really interesting in a way that they've westernized and modernized, but still kept that underlying village type of community. And I'm very jealous of that. I got to be honest. I'm very jealous. And as a person who I mean, I live in the middle of the United States. I live in Missouri, and man, it's the rat race is killer. It really is. We wake up in the morning, like I don't do this. I'm a stay-at-home dad, but we wake up in the morning, we go to work, right? And we go to the job. We don't, most of us don't like the jobs that we have. And
Mm.
so we're miserable there. All right. We send our kids off to be raised by uh, daycares and public schools where they get indoctrinated essentially. And then we come home from work and we're so wore out from work, we just turn on the TV, melt into the couch, and then we repeat that process. We don't get out and talk to our neighbors. We don't grow our own food anymore. And it's very it sucks, man. It really sucks to get dragged down into that rat race. And so I
Yeah.
can definitely understand that missing piece that that you have identified and you're working towards. Man, that's awesome. And not a whole lot of people really kind of get that. But do you find that being down in Colombia and having the community around you and having that sense of your neighbors, knowing everyone and having that community, do you like it better down there? And did you notice, um how did you notice that it was different in
Mm.
Colombia than it is here?
I'd like to answer that with a little bit of an explanation of what happened over the year between you and I talked last. It was a trial by fire. It was a real exploration of like, does this whole community, does this whole living well, does this whole like idea of being grounded actually work? So I'll give you the highlights of the worst year of my life, 2025.
Oh
Started
man.
off with December of 2024. My wife and I had our first miscarriage.
Man.
And that was like our first pregnancy ever. It was tremendously difficult. I just kind of spaced and went into completely threw myself into work. Didn't really support her in the way that she needed to. Now, a couple months later, we built the Maloka. So Maloka is a ceremonial structure. I don't think I had started work on that by the time that you and I had talked. But we built that. We have 35 acres of jungle land in a community. So I'm already starting to feel like I want to be able to live off the land. I want to build a community. I want to kind of return to the jungle in a sense. So I built that. Now it took like three times as much money and three times as long as I thought it would, right? So I'm now out of money and then some. And then all hell breaks loose. We have an indigenous family that's staying with us. and they had been staying with us for about a year at that time, no, year and a half. They had 4 children. We are in a very, very religious part of Colombia. Okay. So you talk about like we let the state basically raise our children. That is very much influenced by by Catholicism here. And so the indigenous tribes that were in this part of Antioquia in Colombia, mostly are extinct. So there's a tribe called the Wiwa tribe that are on the coast of Colombia, and one of their elders and 4 of his children was staying with us for about a year and a half. Okay, so that sets the stage. We moved them out. They've been staying with us in our home. We moved them out to the community. And indigenous people here in Colombia are protected by law. They have different cultures, they have different ways of doing things. They do not have to register their children in the school system, etc. But as I mentioned, there aren't a whole lot of indigenous people in this community in this area of Colombia, and they're extremely religious. Okay, so the elder one day takes his youngest son. 2 of the kids are in school, doing really great. In fact, like the teacher gave us a really wonderful recommendation. They're starting to share their culture, share their language, understand like the Western culture and language. They're just flourishing. And the elder comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to get my youngest kid, who's about 5, into school." And so he goes into the town center and he walks up to the governmental office and says, "I want to register my kid." And they start asking him some questions like, "How old's the kid?" He's like, 5 or maybe 6, because they don't think about time or birth dates the same that we do,
Yeah.
right? And he also is not the best at Spanish, so they should have gotten a translator. What happens was because they're very almost, well, definitely very prejudiced against different religions, different spiritualities, indigenous people in general, they take the child. They're just like,
Wow.
yeah, no, we're gonna put him in protective custody. And I'm like, I'm a couple hours away. So my wife and I hop in the car, we head down and we spend like many hours arguing with the local government and we're just getting stonewalled. Like, this is really bad, you know? We immediately launch a legal defense. Okay, so we've got a lawyer that specializes in indigenous rights. We fought the first of 4 legal battles. So the first legal battle, the judge is like, "What are you doing? Return the child immediately. Like, this is completely unconstitutional." They ignored it, fired a countersuit, which we won. So we won the first one, we won the second one, which was the countersuit. They ignored the judge's ruling on immediately return the children. They took the army the next day and took the other 3 children from our territory. So now we're
Wow.
like, oh my God, like everything is kind of like we're under full scale attack. Okay. Around the same time, I've been fighting for about 3 or 4 years to get my visa here in Colombia. And I had a few military retirement visas approved in the past. I've been here for over 10 years. And the government is like, yeah, we're not going to even look at it. We're not going to say yes or no. We're not going to even look at it. You've got to go back to the
Wow.
US and do it again. So this is while I'm fighting the battle to get the 4 children back. My wife's pregnant again, second time. Okay. So I told the government, no, I'm not going to go back. You can't make me leave my wife. This is now a constitutional right.
Yeah.
Go screw yourself. And I gear up for war again, now on a third front, and sue the government. So I've got a suit against the government. I've got another suit against the government, like second out of 4, processing for the children. I'm out of money and I'm starting to get beat down. And meanwhile, the government is like, well, since we get it, you've got a constitutional action, but we're going to look for you. We're going to extradite you from the country. Okay, so now amidst all this, my wife has a second miscarriage. It's like, dude, everything that could go wrong was going wrong at this point.
Yeah.
And this is when you said, hey, does the community thing work? Yeah, it works. Yes, it does. Any one of those things I think would have crushed some people, and it very nearly crushed me, but and my wife as well. But when I got to the point where everything, like I couldn't even see the light, I was like, I don't even
Yeah.
see my way out of this. I don't know how we're going to win. I relied on the community. I relied on my elders. I relied on the indigenous tribes that came in. Literally, the tribes came in to support us. Letters of support, their own suits against the government. The elders that I was working with contacted their tribal authorities. We had a lot of people on our side. We won all of the 4 suits against the government. We got the children back.
Wow.
We got my visa approved because the government was like, "Oh my God, this is getting some serious heat." You
Yeah,
know, how are we going to deny a visa to a retired military that's got a pregnant Colombian indigenous wife? Because my
exactly.
wife traced her ancestry to an indigenous tribe here called the Nutavi in Colombia.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she was adopted into the Nutavi tribe, and by marriage, so was I. So now I'm indigenous Colombian.
That's awesome,
So
man.
all of that evolved over about a year, and it was the most difficult year of my life, but it proves the rule that this idea of living in community and village is necessary. When it got so bad, I had people that I could call and just say, "Hey man, I'm coming over. I need you to hold space for me, dude." And I was literally like helping my wife through the second miscarriage while we had family around us that trusted us and had our backs. And that made all the difference in the world. If I was in the States, man, I'd be like in a mental asylum or
Yeah.
unfilled right now.
Yeah, I'm telling you, dude. So as you're telling your story, man, and I'm like, wait a minute. You're in Colombia still, right? Because it sounds a lot like the shit that happens here,
Yeah.
and that just goes to show you that governments are governments. They're not they're out for themselves, really. But man, so how is and not to bring up any sore subjects, but how's the
It's
pregnancy journey
none of it
going?
sore. We're currently in a, we're waiting for whenever the right time, mostly whenever my wife feels like it's the right time. Every single miscarriage or failed pregnancy requires a certain amount of time for the woman to reset energetically, physically, mentally, emotionally, all that sort of thing. And so we're walking together and we're still in the fight. I'm not sure when the next time for the next battle, so to speak, will be, but I've got patience and faith. I think a lot of what a lot of what really influenced the two miscarriages was the emotional, physical, and spiritual state we were at the
Yeah.
time. We had a
Yes.
lot going on, too much going on. And so what I'm working diligently to do is put myself and my family in a space of more calm and more ease and more financial security so that when we do try again, my only focus will be the child, the mother, and the safe space that I'm creating for the family. That's something that I've learned. Also, it was a real shock for me to understand, like, you know, you spend most of your, like a lot of us men spend a lot of our adult lives trying to avoid the idea of pregnancy, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it seems like this thing that you get trapped into it, it just happens automatically. And when you really want one, you really discover how fragile life can be and it's not
Yes.
guaranteed. You know what I mean? So, in
Yes.
a good sense, I've come away with a real appreciation of the miracle of life and pregnancy and a deeper understanding of how much attention should be paid to it to ensure it goes well.
Man, that's awesome. I echo the sentiment there. I've got 4 kids, and I didn't have to try for any of them. uh, we had my wife and I early on in our relationship. We had a miscarriage. She had a miscarriage, and I'd say the hardest part of that was my feelings could be pushed down and
Yeah.
suppressed. I can deal with me because no, well, number one, I had already had 2 children, and so I was already a dad. And but that whole support that you were talking about with your wife, I didn't know how to support my wife,
Yeah. Neither did I,
and
dude.
she couldn't articulate or verbalize how she what she needed or how she needed to be treated, and that was the most difficult part for me was watching her go through that pain and not knowing how to help or not knowing
Yeah.
what to do, and tiptoeing around it I don't think helped either. I think it would have been more helpful if I would have just said, hey, what do you need? And just come out and been honest with her and say, hey, I don't understand any of this shit. um the hormones, the feelings, all that stuff. I'm already a father. Like, if you could help me understand what are your expectations, what do you need? I think that would have helped things go a little better. But we have 2 children together now, and the
Mm.
doctor, when we found out that my wife miscarried, the doctor pretty much explained to us. the same thing that you just said. Sometimes when our bodies aren't ready, or sometimes when we got things going on in life, and doctors aren't allowed to bring religion into it, but in no certain terms, like he say,
Yeah.
pretty much if the Lord doesn't think you're ready, and so we kind of took that and chewed on it a little bit. But man, that must have been a real surreal experience going through all of those things simultaneously.
Yeah. It was very challenging. And I was sitting there in the middle of all this trying to figure out, okay, how can I use this for growth? Like, because I mean, otherwise, like, what's the alternative? Just like sit in a puddle on the floor kind of thing.
Exactly.
And this was the birthplace of Okoyai, what I'm doing now, because I had something that I could root into and anchor into as a purpose. Something that I woke up every day being like, I have got to do this. I don't have a choice. It's a calling for me to understand and promote and raise up Indigenous voices so that we can return to this village concept, to return to this better way of living life. And in a meta level, although I can't appreciate it now, I'm really going to appreciate this later because this story gives me sort of the lived experience to say, hey, the stuff that I'm talking about actually works.
Yeah.
You know, it works when you have a really, really bad year, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that was very useful and valuable for it. And I got to the place where I started giving thanks to the universe, to God, to the Great Spirit, to say thank you for these challenges, these opportunities for growth. I also got to the place where I said, hey, thank you so much. I would appreciate a little bit less now.
Yes.
But,
Yes. I've been there too, man. And like let's talk about the medicine a little bit, man. Let's talk about the ayahuasca. Did you go on any journeys during this time?
I did. There were a couple of times where that was I was supporting at a local medicine center that I've been working at for 4 years, and that was my refuge. Ayahuasca, at least monthly, was my space to connect through all the stuff, to look what was happening in the spiritual realm, to reconnect to my center, and to pray, to really pray. I've never prayed like I learned how to pray last year, man. And that was a lifeline for me. There was another time later on in the year where I took a several month break from ayahuasca because I realized that I'd gotten to the place where I knew where I was walking, but I didn't want to use the medicine as a crutch. And I
Yes.
needed to
Yes.
process some things on my own and do my own work. And so that's something you kind of figure out on your own. Um, so I had kind of both experiences. One where I was using ayahuasca regularly to make sure that like it's very useful, by the way, when you're like, I can't see the light. One of my favorite
Yes.
songs I play is literally called I'm Looking for the Light. And it's this song for praying for strength and fortitude in Spanish. It's like a beautiful song. And those times happen. And when you can't see the light, ayahuasca is extremely useful to connect you to that. So you can get like, if you're drowning, it's kind of like the equivalent of like coming up for air a little bit, taking a gasp. Okay. And then I'm back down. And then sometimes you got to figure out how to tread water on your own. And I think both of
Yes.
those experiences are useful.
Yeah, in my experience, the medicine calls to me, brother. It really does. Most of the time I don't even think about it. It's just an experience. Like, so I we don't have ayahuasca available here. And the only thing that we have available is black market psilocybin, and
Hmm.
which is mushrooms on the black market. And so I worry quite a bit about permanent effects. And so I don't use recreationally anymore. But when I started, it was a recreational thing until I went on a journey that it was an ego death trip.
Hmm.
And I it was what normal people would probably consider a bad trip. But I, I had 5-10 minutes of sheer terror,
Hmm.
and I swore off mushrooms, never going to do that again, never. But then I had that reflection period of where I was like, okay, 3 hours of a really good lesson or a journey, and then 5 to 10 minutes of sheer terror. I,
That's
I
not
think
bad.
right. Yeah. It's, and so I had to process the journey I went on and what I learned. And essentially when when I get called back to the medicine, it's usually because I'm going through something that I need help getting to the other side of that issue. And 9 times out of 10, I'm dependent on myself here, right? 9 times out of 10, it's giving in to the higher power, if you will.
Hmm.
And I find that I'm not a very religious person at all, but I'm very spiritual. And we had this discussion the last time we talked about the difference between believing and knowing.
Hmm.
I I don't have the luxury of believing in God anymore. I know God. I've
Yeah.
seen, the collective consciousness is a very big thing for me because, like not too long after that trip, I had gone, I was on a different trip and I'd gone outside and the trees are talking to me, man. Like
Yeah.
not actually talking to me, but I can hear the everything, the I could hear the wind blowing through the leaves and the trees just they were alive and I could sense them. I could feel them. I could feel the grass being alive. And then that's when I come to the realization that, hey, everything's connected. Everything's
Yeah.
alive. Everything's conscious. And then the power of prayer, man, that's that's a freaky thing to see happen, when you're praying for something and then it works. And then you're like,
Yeah.
did I do that? Was that us? But I think it's really a product of like collective consciousness. And I think that if we dig down deep, like essentially we're all collectively God.
Yeah. I'd say most people that have taken psychedelics would probably agree with you on that one. There was a lot of what you're talking about, prayer, I think, comes in a lot of different forms. And one of the prayers that I've used to get me through those spaces was a song called um, Love is Our Destiny. El amor es nuestro destino. And like the kind of going back to a little bit about what you were talking about believing versus knowing. The chorus of the song really speaks to that when you're in that really dark place and you just know that you've got what you need. Si hay frío, se me abrigo. If there's cold, I know I have a jacket. In the loneliness, I know I have a friend. There is no fear because God walks with me. Love is my destiny.
I
That's
got
like the
goosebumps,
the rough
man.
translation. Yeah, it's like it's this it comes from I believe it's from the Inca people. And it's just this beautiful expression of absolute certainty that you are not alone on this walk. And that kind of what you mentioned about like the whole idea of we see in psychedelics that we're all connected, right? This is part of the autistic level, insane amount of focus that I have in this search. It's kind of like, your dad reads to you when you're a kid, right? So at some point you decide, okay, interesting. There's this idea called like books and they have words in them. And so it's possible to like communicate thoughts and learn ideas through books, right? So I want to learn how to read. And I'm kind of right there now with this idea of like the trees are talking to each other, right? So an example of this is we know this is possible, okay? So if the trees are talking to you, to each other, if we're all connected, well, then surely it must be possible to learn that language, right?
Yeah.
One of our elders, he comes from the Wiwa tribe. He's a cousin of the father who had his kids taken away. And he actually now teaches with us. These guys are hardcore nature people, like hardcore. Part of their training is like if they decide that, a kid is going to be a spiritual elder or a teacher in the future, they like sequester them in a cave for like 7 years or more. Like they're sort of the people that will just sit on a rock for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours a day, fast and look at nature. This particular elder, a friend of mine a couple of years ago, was having a real problem with his first pregnancy. His partner had was like I think 3, maybe 4 weeks overdue, and they were trying to do a natural birth. And I mean, at 3 weeks, they were starting to get really, really worried. They're
Yeah.
like, do we need to go to the hospital? And it was basically down to we're going to go to the hospital, but this elder, this Wiwa elder, Ade Gabriel, just came in, and we're going to talk to him first. So Ade, which means father in their language, Gabriel sat down, did a spiritual revision on them, and went out and looked at nature. Actually, this is a couple kilometers away from where I'm at right now. And he came back 3 hours later and he said, "The child's coming tomorrow. How do you know?" "The birds told me." Okay. So they trusted. Sure enough, later, the next morning, the baby came out. These guys are like renowned doulas and birth experts. So this is the sort of people that are teaching us now, that are literally going step by step to like, hey, tell me about how you see the world. Tell me about how energy and animals work. Tell me how dreams work. Help me to understand how the trees communicate.
Yeah.
And these wonderful people are literally teaching us how to do this. So, because I'm the firm believer that anything you see or experience in a psychedelic ceremony can happen in real life.
Yeah.
There are doorways into things that can happen. So I want to learn that language. I want to learn how to read. And that's kind of the process that we're going through.
Man, you had mentioned autistic detail. I can't remember if I it's been a while since we spoke, but I'm fairly sure that we hadn't talked about that yet. But I've actually got a diagnosis for autism. I was
Nice.
diagnosed shortly after my 40th birthday, and for me, it's I if you can't you might be able to hear it, but my youngest son is in there screaming at the top of his lungs, and that's his stem. He has level 2 autism. And so that means he's going to need significant intervention his entire life.
Hmm.
And then, so me being me, I was just curious. I was like, hey, I'm going to go see if, maybe I have autism. And so when I was at the doctor, I made a joke and I was like, I want to be tested for autism. And she said, well, what makes you think you might have autism? And I said, well, my 6 year old, he has level 2 autism and he had to have gotten it somewhere. Now that was, it was one of those moments. I was waiting for a laugh and it
Hmm.
didn't come. And so I was like, I was trying to make a joke, and she's like, "No, really, it had to have come from somewhere." So we're gonna, and
That's a good
so
point. It's like, wait a minute, hold on.
exactly, exactly. And I was just kidding, but yeah. So since we've spoke last, I've gotten a diagnosis for autism, and so that also makes it evident for me that I think differently than most people, and it's pretty awesome actually. But
Yeah.
and also you had spoke about, so in Colombia, in South America, we have, the you have the indigenous peoples, and you also have other communities outside that. Are South American indigenous people, are they similar to the indigenous people here in the United States?
Yes, actually, that's one of the interesting points about it. I'm not sure if we had talked about the eagle and condor prophecy last time we spoke, but the nutshell of it is that there are prophecies among different people, the Hopi, the Lakota, the many people, like all the way down to Peru, all the way up to the Inuit, I think, as well. The idea is that there will be a time in the world where northern, southern, eastern, western tribes come together, all the indigenous people, to share their knowledge and then share that knowledge with the people in the developed world. This idea of all of our wonderful skill sets coming together. So like the gringos, technology and reach and sort of marketing meet ancestral wisdom and heart. And that's part of what we're doing. In fact, our elder spoke on this a couple days ago. I'd asked him why he was doing this, and he said, "Well, 5 or 6 generations ago, when our ancestors were confronted with the Spanish, we went way up to the mountains." And so I'd say a difference here down in South America is that there are tribes, many of them, that either went way up into the mountains or way into the jungle and therefore escaped most of colonialism. That wasn't necessarily possible for the majority of the people in the First Nations up north. So a lot of them had their cultures and traditions and languages more harshly, curtailed or exterminated in many instances. So I'd say the biggest difference is that here down in South America, there are a lot more protected tribes. And I think in general, the governments have done a better job, not to say a good job, but a better job of protecting them than they have up north. But the real similarities is in how they think. Their stories and their myths are a little bit different, but the underlying idea of how they live is basically the same. Community, responsibility, personal hardships, connection with, and respect for nature, close family bonds, close community bonds, those sort of things are pretty much across all their cultures. And so we're starting with South American elders. But what I want to do, I've actually started talking to the Inuit up north and various other tribes in the US. What I imagine is Okoyai is not a ancestral school for Amazonian wisdom. It's an ancestral school for all indigenous wisdom. And so imagine in a couple of years, if you get on to this platform and you're like, I want to talk to a Cherokee elder, you can go do that.
Yeah,
Or I want to
that would be
talk
so
to
cool.
a Karo expert or an Inuit, whatever. And then eventually the Eastern, list there are Chinese, Mongolian, native tribes. There's indigenous in Africa. There's indigenous everywhere, man. And so
Right,
that's kind of what I imagine because when you get down to the root of it, it doesn't matter what necessarily ceremonies the tribes has or what rites of initiations they have or if or which psychedelic medicines they use. It doesn't really matter. Those are sort of like surface layers overlying a underlying cosmology of how to live well. And that's what I want to expose to people. And the thing is, we've never really had that opportunity before. Because in
right,
order to go talk to or develop a relationship with an expert or an elder, really, you'd have to go like live where they live. I mean, right now we're
right.
facing the logistical problem of how do we get internet out to these like mountaintops? So like we're kind of doing things off of tethered cell phones right now. As we grow, I want to be able to send them Starlink internet and that sort of thing. It's a real challenge. But the elder shared with me a dream that he had 10 years ago, the one that put him on his path of learning. And he said, I dreamed that I had a camera, and it was this amazing, very expensive telescopic camera. And in my dream, an ancestor came to me and said, you have this tool, and you're going to be able to learn how to use it in the future, but you don't know how to use it now. And in the dream, it showed him like, oh, if you press this button, like the telescopic lens pops out and you can see people and reach people from a very long way away. He told me this 3 days ago. He said, Scottie, that was 10 years ago. And this is what we're doing right now. Now I'm understanding how to learn how to use the camera. He's talking about the reach that our technology is giving him to where he can sit down from people with people in Seattle and Chicago and North Carolina. And you're talking to an indigenous elder up in the mountaintops in the Sierra Nevada in
Hell yeah.
Colombia. Mind blowing.
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome. That is amazing. I'll tell you what brought me to that question is you had mentioned a doula
Yeah.
and the indigenous have doulas. And I had spoke to a doula not too long ago, a few weeks ago actually. And she had mentioned that community is the biggest part of what she does.
Hmm.
She essentially brings the community to the uh the birthing process. And I thought that's so admirable. And we've gotten so far away from that here in the United States, but I think it's coming back. I think community is coming back because everybody's broke, right? I think the need for childcare, the need um for somebody to show you change it, show you how to change a tire or change your oil or something like that. I think there's it's gotten so far out and people are so lonely, people are so they don't know how to do anything. I think it's slowly starting to come back here in the United States. Is that your experience in Colombia? Are people getting tighter as time goes on, or are they splitting up like we did?
Well, I think that's a really great question. I think it differs here in Colombia than it does in the US in the sense that the Colombian culture has been very well preserved. So this is one of the happiest countries on earth. We're typically in like the top five at least, maybe the top three. And this is a country that in the last couple of generations has gone through civil wars and changes in leadership and severe economic hardship. And yet they're still the happiest people on earth. Like, what goes on with that? Well, it turns out that this culture has preserved very close community ties, even if they're not indigenous. social circle ties. They still live next to each other. Like I get my eggs from the guy like two doors down, and he like we had power go out the other day and he threw me over an extension cord so I get my, fridge. Like this is just how we live.
Right.
There's landslides, you never know when a road might be blocked and you might not be able to get into the town. It doesn't matter because of the close community ties that we have here. And I think what you said about the US, I'd like to propose one of my ideas and see what you think about this is the idea that kept a lot of us locked into this dream of the white picket fence used to be that, well, if you apply yourself, if you go to college, if you do what we tell you to do, essentially, you'll be fine. You'll be able to support your family, et cetera. And that is kind of dead. I
Yep.
mean, how many people, like you're in an extremely wonderful, blessed position. I won't say fortunate because that takes your own effort out of it. But for one parent to be working and the other staying at home is not an economic reality for many people here.
Right.
So it's like, well, now both parents have to work and I'm not seeing my kid and I'm unhappy. Like, what else am I supposed to do? I mean, this is kind of a microcosm of what I went through. I went through the army and I transitioned out of it. It's like, okay, well, serving my country wasn't exactly what I was supposed to do for the rest of my life. And then I went to the corporate world and made a lot of money, still unhappy. Then entrepreneurship made a lot more money and I'm more unhappy. So like I kind of got frustrated to the point where I said, okay, well, what else is there? If
Yes.
I'm following the guidance that everybody tells me I should be doing and I'm still not happy, then what other alternatives are there out there? And for me, that was community, ancestral medicine, living closer to the land, respecting nature, that sort of thing. That's what the indigenous are telling us. That's what I've learned in my experience. And I think that that's in the States what people are starting to turn to because they realize that we've been lied to.
Yes. Yes. That's the biggest piece of it. I absolutely agree. But I do think it needed or needs a catalyst. Meaning, if let's just say we use my family as an example. If my wife was bringing home double or triple what she is, like we may not be on that path because like I I give so much to psilocybin and mushrooms. I give so much credit to the medicine for how I am, how I perceive things, how I view things now. But you're exactly right. I think people are waking up to the fact that like this whole consumerism, uh consume rat race, just like white picket fence. I think people are starting to wake up to that's not making anybody happy but those on top. I
Yeah.
think people are finally waking up to that. Like we pay, man, what we paid 25 $30,000 last year for health insurance.
Wow.
$30,000 just for health insurance, and that's not including the medical bills that we had above that. And that's for a family of family of five. And that does include, what the employer paid as well. But people are so sick of being sick.
Hmm.
People have right now to buy a vehicle, it's 100K, right? To buy a new truck. Nobody has that. That's a
It used to be what
house.
a house cost.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Well, I live in 1,000 square feet house, man. And it cost 135, and that was
Wow.
2024. Yeah, and so like as far as American homes go, like I live in a tiny home,
Yeah.
compared to what the average American lives in, and it's good enough for us, man. I've got like this studio here is actually like we refinished my garage and put a dividing wall in that's insulated, put an outdoor door on there, and I grow pot in here. Like
Nice.
it's nice in here. Like it's 80 degrees in here right now, and like it's very cold outside. And so like we make it work, and I would love to live here for the rest of my life, but we are inside of a city. But um it, people are waking up, man, and people are. I think what did it, the catalyst for most people is childcare. I really do. I think that's the most, because people want to stay home with their kids, but they can't afford to, you know, and they can't afford to because they're too busy trying to finance the life that they thought they wanted, the life
Exactly.
that they were lied to and told that they wanted. And it turns out that, like, none of us really want that. Like, if you can remember back to when you were like 18, 19 years old, and you get your check, from wherever you like work, or your or the military or whatever, you go out to eat and you enjoyed yourself back then. That's not true anymore. You go out to eat and you eat shitty food. I mean, it tastes horrible. The quality has gone way down, and you're paying sometimes quadruple what you would have 10 years ago. And people are understanding that the way we eat is terrible. You go to the store and you buy, like, you go to the store, you can buy a loaf of bread and sit it on your counter for a week and a half and it doesn't go bad. Like,
That's not good.
things don't rot anymore. And we make our own bread here, and that's what kind of opened my eyes to everything else. Like,
Yeah.
oh, this we just cooked this bread 2 days ago and it's already bad. Well, the stuff that I bought from the store, it could sit on the shelf for 6 months and be fine. Like, what is wrong with it? And we're eating these things, and I think that's actually contributing to some of the birth rate issues and
Oh
and
yeah.
fertility issues. Um, so there's a lot that goes into it, but basically, I think the Western world is trying to kill us.
No, 100%, which is not to get into politics, but Bobby Kennedy, I think, is really fighting a good fight to return us back
I,
to
yes,
let's
yes,
talk about eating some good stuff, you know? He brought up a really great point on his recent Joe Rogan podcast, which is basically like the US is the best place to get sick, but it's the place where you're most likely to get sick.
yeah,
And we're feeding our people poison and then monetizing them being sick. And I think that that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned something earlier about there has to be this like this, you said a catalyst. I hope that's not the case because it's kind of like the old adage of the frog getting boiled in water. The water has
yes,
been getting hotter and hotter for a long time now, and some of us are already getting boiled. So, when you're teaching your kid to like not ram his head into the coffee table, option one is just let him careen around the corner and just go right into the corner, like a daredevil. He'll learn eventually. Or you can teach your kids vicariously, and I kind of would like to say hey, there are other ways out here and prompt change without something drastic needing to happen. I mean, what is it going to take? World War III? Well, we're already in the middle of it, and nobody's nobody's saying much so far. It's like we just keep getting more angry at external forces and other things outside of our control, like who's president or, whatever, this or that social issue. Another thing that's important, I think, is to realize that we've been trained under this entire model of consumption and consumerism, right?
yes, yes,
That's happening in the medicine world today. And that's a huge problem. That's actually one of the biggest problems that we're solving here at Okoyai. Because when things get really bad, and you've been trained to search for magic pills your entire life. Oh, Advil makes my headache go away. Ozempic makes my fat go away. Okay, well, what's the ancient equivalent of that? Oh, ayahuasca must make my trauma go away. No,
yeah,
bro, it doesn't. And
right.
it takes
Sometimes
people
it
some
gives you
time.
drama.
Yeah, well, sometimes. But it's like it's not I'm not saying that it's not going to help. It does help a lot of people, and it's my favorite medicine of all time. Um, but I think people are missing the point of patience is required. Personal
Yes,
responsibility and accountability is required. Integration is required, which is not this idea of like, oh, what is the medicine telling me to do? No, integration is doing what the medicine tells you to do. And
yes,
that's a really hard thing to do. And you can't expect like anything to take away 30, 40, 50, 60 years of lived trauma and experience without the responsibility of sitting down and saying, okay, what is going wrong with my life and how can I fix it? And I think that's what people need to focus on. And we also need to realize that like people are flying down to take ayahuasca without any understanding of the cultures of who it came from or their
right.
frameworks around how it should be taken. and they're going back, they're isolating themselves again. And then 3 weeks later, they're back to baseline and they're like even more depressed than ever because they glimpsed heaven. And now it's like, well, what's going wrong? Like ayahuasca was like, I think this thing, okay, maybe I need to do something stronger. Maybe it's iboga. It's like, guys, hold on, slow down, take a breath, and let's start with the basics and foundations of what means a good life and what's in your control. How's your diet? How's your sleep? And if you fix those things, you may realize that ayahuasca wasn't the thing you were searching for anyway. You may not need it. And that requires community and time and communication, which is why we started to do that and why we moved completely away from this idea of like a retreat model. Because like
Yeah.
people are looking for retreats like they used to look for hotels on book on hotels.com. Who has the
Yes,
softest beds and who's got the juice bar. And
exactly.
the elders are sitting like, nope.
Yeah. And it stops becoming fun for them, right? Because they're not helping at that point. They may be causing an issue, and I that's part of the reason why I think a catalyst is needed, because people are like that, right? I mean, the my oldest son is 22, and he still wants stuff. He wants to go buy stuff. And no matter how much I tell him, like, listen, this isn't, you don't need all that shit. You don't need,
Mhm.
you know, like he has started a bong collection, and a water pipe collection. So I tell, like, he had spent $300 on a bong, and I was like, what are you doing?
Jesus
Like, you
Christ,
are,
man.
yes, he's a young father, and he's like, "What? It's really cool. It does this and this and this." And I was like, "But it was $300. You've got bills to pay, son." And he's like, "Oh, I know. I've got it. I've got it." But and I told him then, I was like, "You spend a lot of time trying to impress people that you don't like with shit that you don't have, like with money that you don't have." And
Yeah.
he's like, that's true, Dad. That is very true. But even now, like, he's getting to he's slowly getting it. Like, you can live a good life being broke, and it's totally fine. We can um the most fun I usually have is usually free. Like, most of the good times I've ever had came free. And it's usually with good people, community, and family, friends, and maybe a little drink, or some shrooms, or some weed or something like that. But most generally, it's just camaraderie and community, and a sense of belonging to a group, I guess. But
Hmm.
I think he's starting to get it, and Gen Z as a whole, I'm not sure that they're going to get it before, like, a civil war or a World War III. But Generation Alpha, the COVID generation, like my 6-year-old's, he is a close analog to what I used to be when I was a kid. I would go outside, I would play, use sticks to play in the ground. Like, he has all
Hmm.
the internet and everything. He has everything available to, and he's a total tablet kid. He really is. But he loves to go outside and play. He loves to do things with mom and dad. He loves to do things with other people, and he has autism. So that's kind of weird in itself. But I mean, I think the younger, the generation coming up, Generation Alpha, if done correctly, we can bypass all that consumerism shit. And because the United States hasn't always been like this. I mean, if you remember back in the 90s, things were a lot simpler, right?
I
Well,
remember.
if you go back even farther than that, the 70s, the 70s were even more simpler, and before 1920s, they didn't have cars. And so, with the invention of cars, and the more we could spread out and travel, and stuff like that, I think the more we were doing that stuff, like, people that were making the cars and making the stuff, they figured out, like, hey, if we make this too good a quality, people won't buy it. they'll have no reason to buy it. So then we get built-in obsolescence. And when built-in obsolescence came, then it was like, okay, well, we've got this factory over here and we can make all kinds of widgets over here. And
Hmm.
we know that people don't need widgets, but we're going to tell them that they do. And I think that's how it
Yeah.
happened. I think it's really
Yeah.
people advertising. You look at commercials on television, they're everywhere you look, somebody's trying to sell you shit. They're trying to sell you shit that you don't need to impress people that you don't like. And they are robbing us of our youth. They are robbing us of our community and uh, our fellowship. I'm trying to think of the word, the congregation. They're robbing us of our congregation.
Yeah.
And I think it is possible to have the political model of the United States and also have the community of a village. I believe that can happen because it's like 250 years ago. We didn't have TVs. We didn't have, all we had was books, man. And I think if people, I think if people understood that they've been lied to, without that catalyst, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I agree with you. And kind of like what you mentioned about the commercials is like, how do they sell you this stuff that you don't need? Well, by comparing you to other people that have it and making you
Yes.
feel less than because you don't. And
Yes.
so it's this sort of systematic attack on our identity and our just being happy. And people wonder why we're, more anxious and more stressed and more depressed than before. And the antidote to that, I think, could be a catalyst. It also could be people deciding to live differently and doing things differently. And one of the most exciting things that we're doing here in Okoyai, I mentioned that we bought territory, we established a Maloka and a community. And now that we have been adopted into the Nutabe tribe, my wife and I are establishing what's called a cabildo. We already have established it spiritually, and we were in the groundwork phases of getting it approved by the government. Now, what this means is a cabildo, an indigenous cabildo, is a autonomous government recognized by the state of Colombia, where we set our own rules and we are ancestrally, spiritually, and physically protected sacred territory. And so that's what we're doing for ourselves and our community so that we can raise our children the way that we want to, and we can grow our own food and be self-sustaining without having to rely on the state, which I think is a extraordinarily important move to recover our autonomy and independence.
Now, politically, here in the United States, we're going a little backwards from that. Like, so people want to go. The younger generation is wanting to lean towards communism,
Mm,
and that is a model that just won't work. I I I I have no faith in communism or socialism, any of that stuff. The less the state has to do with your life, the better. Like
yeah.
if you could totally remove, but people really, and I think it's really bad in Europe, really bad in Europe. It's like
Yeah, people
people
get
over,
locked up for social posts in Britain.
yes, yes, but and they'll still, if you talk to them, they will still demand their government to take care of them. They will
Yeah.
still demand those, what we call here in the United States, entitlements. I don't believe in that. It's like I pay taxes for a reason. Come on now, but here in the United States, we call them entitlements. In Britain, if they, or in Europe, they want to give their government control of their food supply. They want to give the government control of their power supply. They want to give control of everything to their government, even while the government is systematically taking away their freedoms and replacing them with, I mean, whatever else, whatever they got going on over there in Europe. I see it happening here, but I think there's a lot of old school people like me that are like, I like, listen, capitalism may not be the bee's knees, but it's a whole lot better than everything else out there right now.
Yeah, I think it was Winston Churchill that said, democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. You know,
Exactly.
it's like,
Exactly.
yeah,
And
like
as
I think
speaking of Winston Churchill, I just saw a news
they just took him off
article.
the money. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't that
Yeah. Such a
that's
shame, man.
wild? And
Yeah.
it comes in
It's
a
very
time where
interesting.
we're looking down the barrel of World War III. And I was kind of wanting to get into politics a little bit because of
Sure.
um your so I you are you still in Medellin or near
I'm
Medellin?
a couple hours away from Medellin. Yeah.
So I know that's kind of the central area of Colombia. How far away is that from Venezuela?
Couple hours for flights, maybe 16 hours, 20 hours of driving. I've got a really good Venezuelan friend, as a matter of fact. Interestingly enough, like one of my cousins is super left wing, and I was talking with him about what was happening, many months ago with Maduro, and he was trying to tell me how wrong I was for supporting Maduro being, like ousted when I've been here in Colombia for 10 years, watching the Venezuelans backpack across the country, fleeing their own country. And I was literally sitting right next to a dear brother of mine who is Venezuelan and was supporting me in my idea that Maduro is a bad guy. And like, somebody in the middle of Nebraska was very, very, very interested in telling me how wrong I was with absolutely knowing zero Venezuelans. Uh, I love my cousin, by the way. He's a great dude, but I think he was wrong in that instance. Yeah, is that kind of what you're getting at? Sorry, I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
mean to
I just
interject in your question.
no, no. It's that's exactly what I was wanting to. But I was basically wanting to go that direction and see how things are doing in Colombia after that whole debacle in Venezuela.
Yeah, we're kind of in Colombia in a sort of a smaller example of what's happening in the US right now, meaning that we had a right-wing president for many years, and now we have a far left-wing president. And it's interesting because it's like I don't I think either political party is basically just the same thing. It ends with somebody trying to control you with guns. I think
Yes.
you and I are probably libertarians. I just want to be left alone, and I think the government involvement is just not good in general. So interestingly, like the left both really damaged me in terms of making it so difficult to get my visa. And also they just declared all of the Amazonian rainforest completely protected and unavailable to oil companies. So I was like, so that they're not, it's not all bad, it's not all good. Um, I will tell you from a personal standpoint that a lot of why I supported Trump. I haven't voted for anybody, just for the record. I voted for one person ever in my life. That was Ron Paul. That's the
Hey,
only
that's a
person I voted for president. That's it.
that was a good vote though. I
Yeah, it was
mean,
a great vote.
Ron
I was
Paul's
very
pretty
proud.
awesome.
He's such a cool dude. Um, I was really hoping that Trump wasn't going to get us into any more wars. That was a big reason.
Me too.
And I feel like he's let a lot of us down. We're now involved in multiple wars. That's not to say that there are some good things about it, like Maduro getting out of that country is, I think, inarguably amazing for Venezuelans. And I would challenge anyone to find a Venezuelan to say differently. And I think that the poor people of Iran being liberated might be a good thing. Now, if you take a little bit of a longer view for history, we put that government in there in the first place with regime change. So it's kind of like the American model is cause a problem, monetize the problem, monetize the solution to that problem, and say, oh, look at us for saving it. Well, forgetting the fact that we caused it in the first place. That's reflective of our pharmaceutical system and our healthcare system, as well as our educational system, as well as our just general culture. So that's a little bit of frustration coming through. But yeah, that's kind of what I think.
Man, you're preaching to the choir because I was just thinking that yesterday. So yesterday they made its decision that they're going to release a strategic release of our oil reserves, and I was thinking like, what did you just go cause a problem so you could solve it? Is that really what you just did? And it's essentially what it's looking like. But I I I absolutely support what's going on in Iran right now, and I know that it's kind of antithetical for people like me to even say things like that, because that's exactly why I voted for Donald Trump. Because like I voted for Donald Trump because the whole endless war type thing that he had ran on. He also had ran on the Epstein files. That's pretty important to me. And I I know that we're being lied to. I really do. I understand all that. But the reason why the Epstein files are important is because these are the people that are running the world, and they're doing some insane sick shit. And I if we just if we just take our feelings and politics out of it, we would absolutely want these people to be held accountable for what they've done and what they're doing. But that's one of the things I also I believe in. I like a lot of Donald Trump's foreign policies, and
I do also, for the record.
I don't think that he's not very far right. Okay, so what I see in Donald Trump is an old school Democrat.
Exactly. Like the right has moved almost to old school Democrats, and the Democratic Party has gone into Looneyville, which
Yes,
I hope they figure. Like I can't understand. I mean, so that's why we get like Robert Kennedy, old school Democrat, liberal. I would consider myself more of an old school liberal, but I think that there's not anywhere to go for the majority of just sane people. And this is kind of what I'm talking about, is like I made the choice to just get out.
right.
I don't feel that I have any possibility of changing that system. Great case in point. They released the Epstein files. Amazing. But Congress voted to block the release of molestation and abuse and sexual criminal records for
All the
Congress.
things that we needed to
It's
know.
like, hold on, dude, what? Come on. So like at what point do we just start burning the whole thing down?
Right, right. And I don't know if that's where it's like, are we being pushed that direction? Because it seems like right and left are working together, and
Yeah,
they're
I think that's always
kicking
been the
our
case.
ass. They are kicking our ass. I don't know how much longer they can keep up this lie. And right here on the cusp of World War III, and they stopped short of calling it World War III because there's no major powers fighting each other. It's all being
Yeah,
done by
well, just wait.
proxy.
I mean, one of the wayward missiles hit like a North Korean embassy. I think I read. So,
Yeah,
dude,
yeah. So
oh,
we're
God,
right there. We are right there. And I don't it feels like if you stand back and you take the 10,000 foot view, it feels like it doesn't really matter which party it is. This is what they want. I think World War III is
exactly.
what they want. And they're fighting each other. They're fighting, they're getting us to fight each other to to get to that end point, that to get where they're wanting to go. And I try to understand, like, am I being told this certain piece of information, whether it be good or bad, to get me to feel a certain way? And when you wake up every day and you have to question everything that you're looking at, like, am I being persuaded to feel this way? Am I being, lied to, or is this propaganda? I think if you wake up every morning like that, it does a lot to you. Like,
Yeah, well,
if
now we're in the age of AI, man. We can't even tell what information
yes,
is right versus not right. There's going to be no way to tell, literally, in a
right,
very short amount of time, maybe even this year. And so I think that and this is a good thing and a bad thing, it is going to inevitably push people towards community and human connection
yes,
because it's
yes,
kind of
that's
like the only thing we have, man. It's like
yeah,
in this absolute chaos and dumpster fire that's going around all around all of us. What do we do? Well, maybe simplify our lives. Maybe
yes,
talk to people and have relearn the art of communication and discussion. Because like I had a person that I was working with last year, and she spent some time with us, and she was going on about how much she hated Trump. And her point was like, this is how divided the world is, and we should really be more together. And it's a shame people aren't having conversations. And then in the same breath, she talked about, and on the way here, I sat down at the bar, and there was a guy that I started talking to, and he was a Trump supporter. And I told him, I don't even want to talk to you. You're a horrible, awful person. And she like
Yeah.
literally left the bar and went away. So like she was talking about how divided we were and how we should really communicate more. And then she literally in the next step told me how she just didn't even want to hear somebody from the opposite side. And that's a real art of an open mind and critical thinking that we've completely lost because we were
Yes.
relying on other people and sources to tell us how we should think about the world, which is why I've kind of got the opinion of if you're a hardline party, Republican or Democrat, you're not thinking for yourself, period.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, man. And also another really insidious temptation here is to continue to focus on those things. We focus on external things beyond our control.
Yes.
Meanwhile, we're sitting in a dirty room with a bad diet, bad sleep, poor
Yep.
relationships, and anxious nervous systems. And I think drawing a little bit from Jordan Peterson, well, before you try to organize somebody else's house, clean your own room. If you're talking about
Absolutely.
we shouldn't be involved in the conflict in Iran, are you involved in conflicts in your life? You know, how are your
Yes.
relationships? And like putting the focus back smaller. And I think that's going to help a lot of us. And yeah, man, it's hard to talk about these things. Like I feel your frustration and I feel the frustration of a lot of people that are in the States as well. And then there's another layer to this, which is what our WeWa elders are doing. Because another thing I asked the elders is like, why are you doing this? So what I was telling you before is like 5 or 6 generations ago, the Spanish came, they went up to the mountains. This tribe went down or went up many generations. They were doing energetical, spiritual work, protecting themselves, living up on the glaciers in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And within the last generation or two, their elders got together and said, okay, we've done our spiritual work. We're looking down there, and things are not good. So it is up to us as holders of this ancestral knowledge to go back down, to integrate ourselves back into society, to educate our children how to speak Spanish so that we can talk to these people about how to reconnect to their roots and how to take care of nature, because otherwise the world is going to destroy itself. And so this is part of what the tribes are doing is coming out of the jungle and out of the mountains to start to tell us how to live life and stop this train wreck that's happening. Maybe we can't get all the way up to the the driver's engine and stop it, but we could at least maybe get off and not
Yeah.
die, and
Yeah. And it
that's kind
starts
of what
right
I'm trying to
here.
do.
It starts
Exactly.
right here.
It
And
starts with us.
you tell people like,
Yeah.
hey, well, when I talk to people, I generally don't start a conversation with the intention of changing anyone's mind. Like I'm
Yeah.
just having a conversation. But I think a lot of people are in today's political climate, they are set out to change people's mind.
Hmm.
And like I see that from like the people that don't want to talk and don't want to have a conversation with the other side. I see that primarily on the left. But I do see it on the right sometimes, but I see it primarily on the left. And when I see it, it's because they generally only want to talk to people who agree with them, and their worldview is such that it depends on the delusions of other people to have that worldview. And I think it's a huge problem here in the West, but I've seen it in other parts of the world. We, particularly in the West, look at the world for how we want it to be, not for how it is. And I think to start to have that dialogue, it starts with conversations just like what we're having right now. And it starts like with okay, can you say that word?
Okoyai.
Okay, okoyai.
Okoyai.
Okoyai. Okay, so with that, in teaching, not even teaching people, but reaching people and spreading the idea of community and spreading the idea of open dialogue and conversations. And listen, we if we go into a conversation not looking for the things that we disagree on, but let's start a conversation to find the things that we do agree on so we can build off of those. And that's
Yeah,
essentially what I try to do with this podcast. I think that's what you're trying to do down there in Colombia.
exactly.
And it all does start with us. I think that may be the catalyst. That may be, we may be the catalyst. And I know that in 2026 is the same as 2025 and 2024, people are looking for authentic voices, and people are understanding nobody wants this AI bullshit, even though we continue to use it. We continue to fund our own demise. Nobody wants it. They're all looking for authentic voices, authentic experiences, authentic work. You know, authenticity is the new gold, and
Hmm.
I think that may be the catalyst as well. And just speaking out, thinking out loud here, I I hope that we can all come together without a giant big boom. And I mean that's what I'm attempting to do here.
Yeah. Two quick zoom outs. One is a zoom out a little bit in the past, because I think a lot of times you are correct. I think the people that are currently trying to stifle speech are those on the left. But if you zoom out, I mean, in the 90s, it was the right trying to control the left, like trying to get
Yes.
Howard Stern off the air. And then if you go back even farther, McCarthyism, right, is a notable historical example. Anybody that even breathed the idea of socialism or communism could be put in jail.
Yeah.
Like that's not good, you know? So it's like the left is currently trying to curtail things now. It'll probably be the right tomorrow. And I think that's kind of like the hideousness and the beauty of the system in one, because the hideousness of it is that both, if you're looking for power and if you're looking to enact a certain way of doing things and you're willing to control people at the point of a gun to do it, that's either totalitarianism or socialism.
Yeah.
Neither are good, right? Nazi Germany, um, Soviet Russia, Maoism, we could list all the examples. So it's like neither right, far extremism or left extremism is good. Doesn't work. But there's something in the middle. And so I think the majority of people really mean well.
Yes.
They want children to grow up happy and well educated and free and wonderful and alive. That's what we really want. And so I think if we focus on that and instead come to say, okay, well, what do you want to happen? Well, I want my kids to grow up well. Okay, great. The only thing that differs is the way in which we think that should happen. And I think where we get into trouble is this is the way that I want to raise my children, and so therefore everyone else must raise theirs the exact same way.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
sit down with your arrogant self, man. Raise your children in the
Exactly.
way that you want to. And how about you just do that in a free way? Like, this is the libertarian model. You do what you want to do, man. You know, as long as you're not like burning someone else's house down or putting them in danger or trying to kill them, you know, stop
Exactly.
that. But like, this is kind of like Ayn Rand was a bit extreme in in a lot of her views, actually. I was influenced a lot by her. Atlas Shrugged. Um, what's her one about architecture? Have you read any Ayn Rand?
So it's been a long time and I don't remember any of it. I got to be honest with you. So my formal education stopped at 8th grade. So I went through three years of high school where I didn't learn a damn thing. I've got pretty bad ADHD. I didn't know it at the time, but I just wasn't interested in school. And um, she was required reading, and I do remember reading parts of it, but I don't remember much at all.
That's
Just
very
in
interesting. She was
conversation.
required reading. Yeah, she was basically a Russian author that escaped Russia, I believe, during the White and Red Revolution, and was essentially the modern day founder of libertarianism. Her ideals really influenced Ron Paul, a lot of our libertarian thought. So I would think many people would attribute her as like the mother of libertarianism. Pretty atheist and very hard line. She was extremely against anything communist or socialistic. I don't know, man. I think the reality is like when you talk to indigenous people, they don't really talk about politics so much. There was one recent example. of a couple weeks ago, there's this thing called the Linea Negra, the Black Line, and the tribes, four of them in the Sierra Nevada Valley, the Arhuacu, the Kogi, the Wiwa, and one other that I keep forgetting. I'm very sorry, fourth tribe. They basically uh, many years ago created a treaty with the government that within their ancestral territory, there would not be resource extraction. And the local government, the regional government tried to reverse that, and they got up in arms about it, protested, got it reversed, so they're still protected. But it's very rare that they get involved in political things. When you talk about them, they're not talking about politics. They're just quietly raising their families.
Yep.
And I think that's probably where the majority of our focus should go. Like what you were saying, fix your own stuff first. And I think that's where real societal and cultural change happens. It's a lot easier to point the finger and talk about ideas. It's a lot harder to actually demonstrate that in your own life, the same way that it's very easy to take an ayahuasca ceremony and understand with clarity your vision and purpose in the world. It's a lot harder to change your life to actually do that. And I think you had your own experience, right, with mushrooms. You lost a lot of weight, I remember you telling me
Yeah. Yeah.
after mushrooms, right?
Yep.
But you had to do that. You said, okay, here's what the medicine told me. Now I'm going to put this into my own life. And you did the work, lost a lot of weight, made yourself a lot of healthier as an example. And I think it's necessary. And one of the things that this podcast is so necessary for is we need to talk about this more, our own personal responsibility and simplifying our life.
Yes, man. Preaching to the choir, brother. It's so when you're saying like indigenous people don't talk about politics all that much, I'll tell you why we talk about it here in the West. Um, and it goes back to a lot of the things that I was saying before, how we depend upon our government for everything, and that started in Europe. I believe, well, maybe not started in Europe, but our version of it started in Europe, and it worked its way over here. And I think people forgot, or the government specifically forgot, the purpose of a government. And like, I wish we didn't have to have lines on maps, but we do, right? We a nation without borders, you don't have a nation, and you've got to defend those borders. And that, politics here in the United States is not going to match politics in Colombia. Politics in Colombia is not going to match politics in, let's say, Brazil. And Brazilian politics are not going to match Australian politics, not going to match, European politics, so on and so forth. But I think government th- was never intended, or at least the United States government was never intended to take care of its citizens.
Yeah.
It was to do exactly what they're doing right now in Iran, what they did in Venezuela in January. That's what governments are for, is to protect us, right? And that's what we pay our taxes for. We pay our taxes for fire, for police, for we pay our taxes for infrastructure and all that good stuff. But like, the government has no business being in my personal life. They have no business telling me how to raise my child. The
Yeah, that's why exactly why the why the Protestants left and founded this place in the first place.
Exactly. And I think people are kind of getting hip to that these days. I think people are especially on the right end of the spectrum, people are kind of getting tired of government intervention. And even on the left, when we're talking about like gay marriage, right? Um, they the left has a general understanding that the government shouldn't be in in marriage, or shouldn't be in the wedding business at all,
Yeah.
and they accept that on the left, right? They say, well, the government has no business being in the marriage industry, and we all agree with that, but that doesn't stop the government from taking intervention anyway. And I
Yeah.
think if we hold the government accountable for what they've done, for what they continue to do, and we stop giving them the power to control us. Because, like, let's just, especially here in the United States, we've given that power to them.
Yeah.
And of essentially what our Constitution guaranteed us was freedom from the state, not, not here's all my money, now take care of me. That's not what the government's for. And that's individual freedoms that were guaranteed by the United States Constitution is eventually like what led us here to the place where we have no community, we have no, but it was a perversion of that original document. There's
Yeah.
things, amendments and all that good stuff, and if the current government doesn't like the Constitution, they'll just change it. And I
Yeah, the original idea was to put power closer to the people. That's why we had
yes,
representatives and Congress people. Like the idea was to limit the power of the federal government. But it's sort of, I mean, you just look at capitalism, right? Um, it tends to, everything has sort of like a natural hierarchy, and
yep,
power tends to concentrate at the top. And that's what happens. It's sort of how it goes unless you really control that. And I believe our original founders did their best to control it, but we're an empire in the last stages of dying, like Rome.
yeah,
The citizens want their free gladiator fights and bread.
yeah,
And I can't remember who said it, but it was basically like democracy will last as long up until the point where 49% of people realize they can vote themselves 51% of the benefits.
yep, yep.
And
I think that was what
yeah,
we're seeing now is
yeah,
democracy actually is kind of a pain in the ass. And I think that we're seeing that right now in the United States. People are slowly understanding that, like, the representative the representative democracy that we had is no longer available because it's so freaking large now. Um, that and lobbyists have their own interests and everything. Like, we've monetized politics here, and that's essentially
yeah,
what's wrong with it. Um, and I don't know how to get the government back to where it was, but I absolutely know how to bring people back, and it's by doing exactly what you're doing down there,
yeah,
and having that. We don't have to, we don't even have to pay attention to politics for it to work, right? And
exactly. You could
I
just
keep
turn off the news entirely. Probably make you a
exactly,
lot happier.
exactly. It really would, because the government's going to do what the government's going to do, and there's not a freaking thing you or I is going to do to stop it. We can have our input. We should all stay educated about it, but we shouldn't worry about it so much. And if you're going to worry about it, like, just understand that you have to start inside and work out. You have to start with your local politics
Yep.
and work out. And what does that tell us? That tells us we need to worry about our own house before we worry about everybody else's house.
Yeah. No, that's it, man. That's it. So like start what is within your control. Because at the very least, if you fix your diet, fix your exercise, fix your relationships, you'll think, articulate yourself, and act more clearly, which
Yeah.
is whatever your eventual goal is or whatever you want to change, you'll be more effective in doing so. But to a culture that is got a very short attention span and very little patience and very little responsibility or accountability, the ones that are looking for a magic pill just got to wait until they get so sick and tired of being sick and tired that they realize the slow way, the patient way, the ancestral way is really the only way to do it.
Right. Right. So, man, let's switch gears a little bit. We've been out this almost an hour and a half now. Uh,
Yeah, it's flown by.
it has, and these conversations always go great. And the first conversation I had with you was really, really spectacular. And that's when I was like, when you shot me a message, I was like, I'm jumping at the chance. Hell yeah, let's do
Oh,
this.
thanks, man. I'm honored.
You're thank you, thank you. So with what you have going on down there, what all so let's go over again, like, what are all the services that you offer, and what are the thing what are all what does it all encompass?
Yeah. Well, for starters, we have a completely free community. You can get in, meet new people, make friends. It's already happening. We've got a map of people across the US and the world. Wherever a new member pops up, so does a little pin icon. So come and join the free community. So far, all of our courses are free. The first three are accessible immediately. So, like the medicine music course, the ayahuasca and plant medicines course, the podcast, we also have a podcast going. Those are all free. You can either support us with a small monthly donation, which helps us feed our elders, or just by being active as a community member, posting, liking, sharing, you unlock subsequent courses. So we've got masculinity courses, we've got dream work courses, tarot. We're moving into like all sorts and levels of spirituality because what we do is we get people into this community. We're like, hey, who has something interesting to share? And if they're like into a particular topic, we create a course about it and have them on the
That's awesome.
podcast. And so it's like we're building as a community, deciding what our particular culture is, which is super cool. And like I mentioned, you also get access to the elder conversations, which is as we go, we add new tribes. We step by step ask them questions like, hey, how do you view masculine and feminine energy? Or how do you view dream work? Or how do you view your relationship with the medicine? Or how do you raise your children? And we are categorizing all of those knowledges. So, like I said, basically everything is available for free. There's options to donate if you want, but it's not required. And the eventual goal, like, I'm not sure what the eventual goal is. The goal right now is just to build a community and eventually have in-person meetups and get Indigenous voices going. If and when we decide to do ceremonial work, that might be an option. But what we want to do is find really good people to work with. Like Vanessa Bright is one of our members, and she's creating a dreams course. She was the first person on our podcast. And it's like, hey, if you've got challenges with your dreams or if you want to explore, go to Vanessa. It's like this idea of creating a community, and the members of that community are the people that are the experts. And so we have people to push people to, not this idea of like, it's not a funnel. It's not trying to drive people to a specific result or a specific ceremony or a specific medicine or anything. It's just like, hey, we're going to be of use to people and see how that goes.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome, man. That is, man. If I had like a perfect vision of something I like a school or a community that I would start, that would be somewhat similar to what I would do. Um,
Well,
except
come
I
on in
would
and
ne-
help us build ours, man. You're very welcome. Like I said, this is a community effort.
I would love to, but unfortunately, I don't think I could get my family to come with me, and I
It's
can't.
online. It's
Oh,
online, bro.
well, yeah. So I could do the online thing. I thought you were
Yeah.
talking about like coming to Colombia. That would absolutely, yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, we
I'm
don't
right
we're not
here.
even offering like anything in Colombia right now. Maybe in the future, but this is completely online because like most people don't have the ability to travel if they wanted to.
Right, right. No, and Colombia is actually not. I mean, it's not that far away, and it's not that expensive to get to, but it's very expensive to get back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but mostly because you
Um,
just don't want to go back.
right, exactly, and that's I cannot pronounce that word for the name of me. O-
Okoyai.
Okoyai.
Yeah, it's
Oko.
comes
Yeah, it's
from
exactly how it's
Oko,
spelled.
which is yeah, exactly how it's spelled. So Oko is um jaguar or Oko is water, and then Yai is jaguar in the Siona language. And so together it means the water jaguar, which
Okay,
is this
it's
idea
right there
of
on your logo.
yeah, yeah, a combination of jaguar, which is like tradition and masculine, and the water, which is flow and feminine. And so that's what we wanted to name our community.
And so that's Okoyai, Okoyai.com.
Yep.
And
Or the
that
school
is
link. If you were to put both links on the podcast, that would be great. I chatted it over to
absolutely,
you.
absolutely. Yes, we will absolutely do that. And where can we find your podcast?
Yep. It's also well, it's on our channel, Okoyai Ancestral School on YouTube. It's also in a nicely produced course inside the community, which is the best place to view it, I think.
That's awesome. And like I know you had mentioned that everything's free and it's by donation. Um do you like do you have many donations coming in? Like how's that going?
It's going very slowly, but I am in this for the long run, and I'm patient because this is something that is way bigger than me. It's not about business. It's not even about sustaining my family in the short term. Like I'm just going to go get a job or something, to keep building this on the side. Monetization or making money out of this is not my primary focus and will never be, because if you make it your primary focus, I think that corrupts the community and people can feel it,
Yes, it
you know?
does. Oh my
So,
goodness, yes.
yeah.
I that's amazing. I couldn't have I I have I'm struggling to find the words for how I feel about that. That is amazing because you're absolutely
That's
right. I think
yeah.
people can feel that. And I've been part of several communities that I've went into with that open mindset and backed right back out of because I got that sense like, wait a minute, you're trying to fucking sell me something. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's so disheartening because you have these great relationships with people and then you find out, oh, I've got to spend $2,300 on this course and like
Yeah.
in order to
That's
stay in the community.
that's exactly why, first of all, we made it free. And second of all, like if you donate to us, you get all the courses unlocked instantly. But you can also literally just be active. If you're active in the group, if you post, if people like your post, you share things, you just get what you want out of it, which is people interacting with you, you gain points. The more points you gain, the higher your level goes. The higher your level goes, the more courses you unlock. So you could be a part of this and get all the information you could ever want to improve your life for free. And so like you have both. So there's no pressure. It's not like we got certain courses that are only unlocked if you give us money. No, you can unlock all the courses, man. Just be active. Um, we reserve some things like our elder conversations for logistics issues and also reciprocity issues for those that are kind of in like coaching tiers with us, because we can't have like 100 people on those calls. But
Right.
the idea is that 99% of the stuff that we do is available for free. Information is the easy part. That's the part that you can probably find anywhere, but it's the people walking with you and the accountability. Like, hey, you were here last week and you said you were going to start working out. Have you started working out? That level of accountability is what we actually need at the end of the day. And that's accessible to people if they're in the right place in the right moment to actually do it. So what we tried to do here is introduce conscious capitalism and community building in the purest sense of the word.
I think I think that accountability is what a lot of people are looking for, but they don't find in the money making places like you're talking about that when you charge money for these things, you kind of get a feeling and people can tell that they're only there for the money and they don't really help you hold yourself accountable or anything. And I think that's something that I struggle with a lot is holding myself accountable when nobody's
Mhm.
watching. And
We
it's
we all
something that
struggle
I'm
with that.
and it's something I'm working on. But that's I'm just so like the first time we spoke, I got this feeling about you that like you're going to do good things, you're going to do big
Thank you,
things,
man.
and I have this great feeling about like Coyote Music School. I had a great feeling about that, even though it didn't work out. It led you to this point where you're
It's
like,
still in there. It's just now part of Okoyai. It was
right,
like a
right,
brand. It was a brand remerge. There's this thing that I've struggled with a lot, which is there's a well-known spiritual concept called sacred reciprocity, which the Quechua people would call Aini. It's this idea of like, in order to give, you have to take, and in order to take, you have to give. There has to
yeah,
be balance. Now, the problem is online, what's the only form of balance that we're aware of doing? It's money, right?
right.
And so that kind of locks us in to where sometimes you can be like, oh, well, I'm just trying to heal and I'm not in the place where I can do it. So, like, they're charging me. It's not that charging money is a bad thing, but it has to be understood, I believe, in an overall higher level view of what reciprocity means. So, no, I'm not going to give you all the courses that I've spent hundreds of hours of developing for free, but you have to give something. That doesn't mean money. You can give us money, and it's not a whole lot, right? Currently, like for all of our courses, it's like $7 a month. It's like just give us a little bit, man, so we can like
Right.
pay the bills. But that's not the point. Reciprocity also is being active and being engaging and doing the things that are beneficial to you, like sharing stuff and like posting and liking other stuff. So there has to be some interchange. And what we've done is in the school community, which is founded by a wonderful guy called Sam Ovens, it is now putting all that together. And so reciprocity can mean money. It can also mean just engaging, and then stuff unlocks for you as you go.
That's awesome. I mean, that's a great business model too, actually. Let
Thanks,
me
man.
ask you, um, let me ask you, is there an option where you can just donate and not be part of the community? Or do you have to be part of the community to donate?
You definitely could donate. I do that kind of on a one-off kind of thing. But what I really prefer is just to have people in the community, and if somebody wants to say, "Hey, can I give a donation?" Sure, and then I give you something as part of that, like some extra access or calls with me or something. I like there to be reciprocity. Um, I guess first step, just come into the community, see who we are. It's free, right? What are you going to lose? And then we can talk. That would be what I would say.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Man, Scottie, this has been such a great conversation. We're coming up
Thanks,
on
man.
2 hours now. I think it's been right at an hour and a half. But man, I'm gonna have to take a break. So let's I tell you what, let's when we hop off here, I'm gonna go take a break. But when I get back, let's go ahead and plan another podcast in a couple
Let's do
months.
it.
And like because right now it is like it's the middle of March here. It's still really cold outside and here in Missouri and well, it's coming into spring and we've got a lot of stuff, a lot of negative stuff going on in the world right now. And I think it's kind of a shadow on this conversation in particular. Because I'm like I right before we came on, I had a conversation with my lawyer, and I was kind of pissed off about that. I'm kind of worried about geopolitics. I'm kind of
Mhm.
worried about war and everything. It's kind of like a shadow hanging over this conversation, and I want to get together and discuss things and like how far you've gone. You're taking this thing in a couple months, and I'd actually like to keep this line of communication open. I want to see you back here on the
I would love that,
podcast
man.
every few months, man.
Let's do that. I love that idea. Yeah, we started the community 2 weeks ago. We're already over 300 members, and we're growing
Wow.
fast. We're growing fast, man.
That is really, really fast. Like 2 weeks, 300 members. That's incredible. And we'll see. Like I'm gonna link everything down in the description below. But what I'll also do is I'm gonna leave a note for my editor here. We'll make a social media post and get that out there. And I'll also are you on Facebook or X or any of those?
Yeah, I'm also on Facebook.
So
What
what
I'll
we'll
do is
do is
I'll post the Okoyai Facebook.
absolutely awesome, awesome. And I will. What I'll do is I'll share all that stuff on Facebook. I'll share it over on X, and we'll get together in a couple months and uh, we'll talk again and see how it's going. And hopefully by then I'm in the community and I can talk more about it because I'll be a little bit more. I'll be a little bit more immersed into it, if you will.
Yeah, man, I would love that. And if you come in and you think of things that you want to add, or courses that you want to add, or discussions, or whatever, man, we're open to it. I would love to build this with like-minded people. That's the entire point of this. And
Awesome.
there's a way that we can use this as a community to reach people and gather people around us that think the way that we do, with a focus on accountability and village life and support. And come in and help me build, man.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, Scottie, listen, everybody. Hang out with me for just a second, Scottie. We'll let these guys go. But hey, everybody, like check out, and I'm still struggling with this word, man.
Okoyai.
Oko Yai and
Okoyai.
Oko Yai. The reason
Yep.
why I've just got a huge tongue and my brain doesn't work right. But
Dude, I feel
um
you.
check out the website and Scottie Schneider is your name. I don't know if I introduced you at the beginning of the podcast, but there you guys go. Check out Scottie's stuff over on okoyai.com. Check out his Facebook. Check out the podcast because, like, ladies and gentlemen, I know if you're listening to this podcast, you'll dig Scottie's podcast. But
Thanks,
anyway,
man.
we'll see you guys next time. Bye.